Alright, hi, I'm Justin Diamond, and today it's chapter 20 from my book, Giant Special Tokyo Love. Let's do it. Kobayashi walked out of his traditional Japanese house, the only one on the block with blue roof tiles. He walked along the gravel footpath in his beautifully manicured garden. There was movement out of the corner of his eye. He turned to look. It was simply the gardener working late. Kobayashi's garden was a flawless victory in his social standing. He wanted to know more about these tenants of his, Sora and her husband, the Gaijin, Diamundo. They were in the mansion in the diagonal lot from his house. But still, he couldn't see it from his yard, partly because of the 6-foot concrete fence he'd constructed around his property, and partly for the trees. Stepping out from his fence and into the street, he could see that the light in their kitchen was on. A minute later, he rang the doorbell and moved his face closer to the camera built into the doorbell so that Sora could see who it was. A brief beep meant that someone had hit the button on the inside and was looking at him. "Yes," came the man's voice. "Yes, I'm Kobayashi, the landlord. Just stopping by to welcome you to the neighborhood," Kobayashi said. "Yes," said the voice again, puzzling Kobayashi. He could faintly hear through the microphone English conversation. Another beep, and the microphone went out. Diamundo opened the door, and he was a Westerner, all right. Not particularly tall or light-skinned, but he had piercing green eyes that Kobayashi had to avert his gaze from. Looking down, he noticed that Diamundo was wearing a yukata, the traditional Japanese summer robe. That was unexpected. "Hello, I'm Diamundo Giasutin. Nice to meet you," Diamundo said in perfect Japanese. "Good evening," Kobayashi said. "I'm an American from the University of Florida. My hobby is ego. It is a pleasure to meet you." Diamundo continued with the standard Japanese meet and greet. Kobayashi was hung up on one word: ego. Did Diamundo say his hobby was ego? Surely Kobayashi had heard wrong. Or more likely, Diamundo had mispronounced another word. But from the sound of the greeting, it was almost certainly rehearsed. "Your hobby is ego?" Kobayashi asked. Ego was the ancient board game that Japanese had been playing for thousands of years, the strategy game of the aristocrats. It was rarely played outside of Asia. Did this Gaijin really play? "My hobby is ego," Diamundo repeated, and this time he gestured, putting a stone onto the board. With the gesture, there could be no doubt that Diamundo really did play ego. How else would he know the proper way of placing stones on the board between the pointer and middle finger? Only Go players would get the gesture correct. Someone who didn't know the game would invariably pick up the stones with their thumb and forefinger. Not to mention the fact that only a Go player would even know it was a game of placing stones on a board. "Just a minute, please," Diamundo said, and withdrew deeper into the house. Sora returned in his place, and she invited him inside for tea, as was proper. But for Kobayashi, at least, the conversation was empty. He found himself coming back to the same detail, that her husband, Diamundo, a Gaijin, was a Go player. It took him more discipline than he would have imagined to wait for a proper time to bring it up. "So, did your husband tell me his hobby is ego?" Kobayashi finally asked. He was sitting at the kitchen table, talking to Sora, who was busy in the kitchen. Diamundo was at his computer in the other room. "Oh yes, he loves to play. But I never knew they played Ego in America. Interesting. Actually, they don't really play Ego in America. It's not so popular there. So, how does he play? On the internet, Sora said. And it disarmed Kobayashi. The internet. He wasn't really sure what it was, but he kept hearing more and more about it. I didn't even know you could play Go on the internet, Kobayashi said. Go look. I bet you he's in there now having a game. Kobayashi peeked in on Diamundo in the next room, sitting at his computer with a Go board on the monitor. It was unmistakable. The 19 by 19 grid with black and white stones strategically placed on its surface. Clank! It even made the sound of placing a stone when the players made a move. Kobayashi didn't know much about computers or internets, but he could tell that Diamundo wasn't playing this game. He was watching. Diamundo started to turn his head and startled Kobayashi, who retreated back to the table. So, maybe he would like to go to the Go Club next Saturday morning, Kobayashi asked. Alright everyone, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.